Most valuable Washington quarter-dollar coins. Welcome to Numismatic Vault Extra. Today, we're exploring the top 4 most valuable Washington quarter-dollar coins from the United States of America, United States. In this video, we'll break down their current market values, highlight notable era coins, and explain the specific conditions that make certain Washington quarters especially rare, including silver content, unique color shades, and other key features that have turned these coins into major players in the collector and investor world. These rare treasures aren't just pieces of history. They're some of the most valuable coins collectors are actively searching for today. So, if you're a coin enthusiast, an investor, or someone who appreciates the beauty and significance of American currency, backhand index pointing right, this video is for you. Let's get started with the first coin. Magnifying glass tilted left money bag. The story of the 1983 Washington quarter begins in a world very different from today, a world where coins still felt weighty in the pocket, where their metallic ring carried meaning, and where everyday change was exchanged with a tactile connection to commerce. In 1983, America was navigating the rhythms of everyday life. Malls hummed with activity, cassette tapes played in car stereos, and coins moved steadily through the hands of millions. Among them was the Washington quarter, a piece of metal so familiar that most people rarely gave it a second glance. And yet, hidden within that sea of ordinary coins, rare examples could one day become extraordinary. On the obverse of the coin stands George Washington, his dignified profile a symbol of enduring leadership. Washington's image on the quarter has been a constant since 1932, a visual link between the nation's beginnings and its ongoing story. In 1983, his likeness was not just currency, it was comfortingly familiar, a reminder that the ideals of the Republic stretched back through generations. Every time someone reached for a quarter, they touched a tiny piece of that legacy. The reverse of the coin depicts the heraldic eagle, its wings spread wide, clutching arrows and olive branches. It is an image filled with symbolism: strength, peace, preparedness, and resolve. In 1983, the world was shaped by the Cold War's final decade, and Americans carried this image of strength every time they paid for parking meters, vending machines, or school lunches. That eagle stood sentry over millions of ordinary transactions, unaware that some of these coins would outlive their humble beginnings to become treasured artifacts. This particular version of the Washington quarter bears the D mint mark, showing it was struck at the Denver Mint. Denver was one of the workhorse mints of the nation, producing huge volumes of coins to keep commerce flowing smoothly. Most of these 1983 D quarters circulated widely, rubbed smooth by constant handling, traded hand to hand with scarcely a thought. Their journey was unremarkable, until decades later, when collectors began to look more closely at what had once been just change. In the eyes of most people, a quarter is just a quarter, worth 25 cents and no more. But in the quiet world of numismatics, every coin is a potential story. Coins like the 1983 D Washington quarter may seem mundane at first glance, but when you study them closely, you begin to see that even ordinary objects can carry extraordinary meaning. Some survived decades of circulation with little wear, while others hold the promise of subtle minting quirks that make them truly fascinating. The majority of 1983 quarters in circulation show the expected wear: softened features on Washington's portrait, dulled surfaces, and edges that have lost their original crispness. These coins tell the story of everyday life: errands run, lunches bought, meters paid, a quiet testament to the unglamorous but essential role coins played in daily transactions. Their surfaces bear the gentle erosion of use, a history etched in tiny marks and faded detail. But out of millions of coins struck that year, a very small number managed to resist the wear of time. Some were tucked away early, slipped into coin albums, coin jars, or collections that went untouched for decades. Others were never spent at all, preserved by collectors or accident alone. These survivors, bearing little to no wear, are the ones that spark excitement when they are finally uncovered. Collectors refer to these pristine specimens as mint-state examples. A Washington quarter that still retains its original mint luster, sharp details, smooth fields, bright surfaces, is a rare sight after 40 years of circulation. These coins may look as if they were struck only yesterday, and that unblemished condition is what elevates them above the ordinary. To hold such a coin is to touch a fragment of 1983 preserved against the odds, a connection to a moment that most coins have long since lost. Beyond condition, some quarters show subtle variations or minting anomalies, tiny differences that occur when millions of coins are struck. Slight shifts in strike pressure, minute alignment differences, and rare die characteristics can make certain specimens especially interesting. To the casual eye, these nuances might seem insignificant, but to the dedicated collector, these are the features that make a coin truly special, setting it apart from millions of near-identical companions. Imagine opening a long-forgotten coin album, dusting off decades of time, and finding a 1983 D quarter that still shines with mint brilliance. The edges are sharp, every feather in the eagle's wing stands distinct, and Washington's profile is crisp as history itself. That moment, the discovery, electrifies a collector's heart, because what was once just pocket change becomes a link to the past, a rare artifact with presence and potential. Collectors often say that ordinary coins are like stories waiting to be told. The 1983 D quarter story is subtle, not dramatic. A coin struck in a year of steady commerce, used by everyday Americans in the unremarkable moments of life. But when such a coin survives nearly unscathed, it becomes a testament to preservation, a whisper from history that draws the eye and invites admiration. In the modern coin market, rarity and condition combine to create value that can be astonishing. A coin's worth is not just its face value, but its story, its preservation, and the demand among collectors for examples that defy the expected. A pristine 1983 D quarter, viewed under bright light and magnification, can reveal a level of detail and beauty lost to its worn counterparts, and that alone can set hearts racing in collector circles. There is also the deep emotional resonance that coins can hold. They are physical objects that witnessed countless transactions, touched millions of hands, and survived day after day without fanfare. When one of these coins is rediscovered in exceptional condition, it is more than metal. It is a connection to the rhythms of life in 1983, a tangible link to the moments that defined that time. Stories abound in numismatic communities about luck and serendipity, ancient rolls of coins opened after years, childhood collections rediscovered, jars of loose change unearthed in dusty drawers. In each case, the excitement begins with the ordinary and blossoms into the extraordinary. A coin that once served as change suddenly becomes a focal point of fascination and admiration. The belief that a coin could one day be worth more than its face value, perhaps far more, is not mere fantasy. It is rooted in the way markets value rarity, condition, and story. When demand meets scarcity, and when collectors recognize something remarkable within something ordinary, the result can be astonishing. A pristine 1983 D Washington quarter may not literally make someone a billionaire overnight, but it can become a prized centerpiece of a collection, a coin that commands attention, reverence, and strong market interest. Yet even beyond monetary value, coins like this remind us that history lives in the smallest of objects. A quarter may seem insignificant in the hand, but its journey through time, from mint press to pocket change to rare survivor, carries the echoes of countless moments and millions of lives. It is a reminder that the everyday has power, and that value is not always obvious. So, the 1983 D Washington quarter is more than pocket change. It is a storyteller, a silent witness next coin. The story of the 1974 Washington quarter begins not in a vault nor on a pedestal, but in the everyday rhythm of American life, jangled in pockets, rattling in cash drawers, passing from hand to hand in the countless small exchanges that knit a society together. In 1974, the United States was riding a wave of cultural shifts. Music was bold and electric, families reached for new possibilities, televisions cast stories into living rooms, and coins were still a tangible part of everyday transactions. Among those coins, the Washington quarter was so familiar that most people barely gave it a second thought. Yet out of those millions of pieces minted, a few would one day be seen as remarkable, rare survivors of time. George Washington's profile on the obverse of the coin was already an emblem of continuity by 1974. His calm, dignified gaze bridged the distance between the founding era of the Republic and the modern world, reminding each holder of the ideals that shaped the nation's earliest days. To the person buying a soda or paying for a subway ride, it may have just been loose change, but to someone who loves the stories behind coins, Washington's face carried the weight of centuries of history. The reverse of the coin presents the heraldic eagle, wings spread wide, clutching arrows and olive branches, a silent guardian of peace and readiness. In 1974, the world was wrestling with geopolitical change, and that eagle stood as a quiet symbol of strength and vigilance, even as most people spending these quarters were focused on daily life and the routines of work, play, and family. That duality, of ordinary use and extraordinary symbolism, is part of what makes coins like this quietly fascinating. This particular quarter carries no mint mark, meaning it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the birthplace of countless coins that have circulated across the nation since the earliest days of the Republic. Philadelphia's presses produced vast quantities of 1974 quarters, each meant to be used and passed along through the varied hands of everyday America. Few of those coins were ever intended to be saved or noticed beyond their face value. Yet, as history has shown, the passage of time has a way of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. In the hands of most people, these coins showed the typical wear of everyday life. They were jostled in pockets filled with keys, rubbed against other coins and loose change, nicked and scuffed from the rough edges of sidewalks and cash trays. Over years and decades, the sharpness of Washington's profile softened and the once bright surfaces of these quarters dulled into countless shades of patina. These coins, though common, were witnesses to a million moments, a silent record of the pulse of everyday existence. But among the millions of 1974 quarters struck, a rare few managed to escape the wear of circulation almost entirely. These coins, preserved by accident or intention, retain the original luster and crisp detail that most lost long ago. Perhaps one was tucked into a coin album and forgotten, or slid into a drawer that was never opened again. Whatever the path, these survivors carry a magnetism that draws collectors in, because they embody the impossible: time without loss. Collectors call these survivors mint state, coins that show no trace of wear from everyday use. To hold such a coin under light and see Washington's profile still sharp, see the eagle's feathers defined with precision, and feel the original surface sheen beneath your fingertips, is to touch a fragment of 1974 suspended in time. It is a reminder that not all coins follow the same path. Some slip through life untouched by abrasion, preserved as if by chance or magic. What makes certain coins even more compelling are the subtle variations and quirks that sometimes occur in the minting process. In vast mintages like those of 1974, tiny differences in die striking or metal flow can produce specimens that differ ever so slightly, barely noticeable to most, but unmistakable to an experienced eye. These nuances, a touch of doubled lettering, a slight shift in relief, a whisper of an anomaly, can elevate a seemingly common coin into something collectors prize. The thrill of discovery is at the heart of coin collecting. Enthusiasts will sift through old collections, dusty albums, and forgotten jars of change, always mindful that the next coin could be the one that stops their breath. Will it be the quarter that stands out with brilliant surfaces? Or the one that hides a surprising variation under magnification? These are the moments that turn casual curiosity into lifelong passion. Even beyond potential mint errors, the very idea that a quarter once spent as everyday change could escape times where captivates the imagination. People dream of finding a coin so pristine that it looks almost as if it walked straight from the mint into their hand. These coins are tiny miracles, relics of preservation in a world where most things age, fade, and wear away. Collectors understand that true rarity is not just age, but condition combined with survival. A coin that has endured decades without losing its original detail is rare precisely because so many others have not. In that survival lies beauty, history, and a form of quiet wonder that can captivate anyone who pays attention to small things full of meaning. There is also the emotional resonance. To hold such a coin is to hold a connection to a moment long past, to imagine the hands that once used it for simple purchases, to feel the warmth of its copper-nickel surface as though time itself had breathed across it. These coins are not merely metal. They are storytellers, whispering tales of everyday life that most of us never stop to consider. In the collector market, these pristine survivors can attract significant attention, not because they contain precious metal, they do not, but because condition and story drive value in ways that transcend composition. A quarter that looks almost new after 40 years can become a prized piece in a collection, a centerpiece that draws admiration and conversation alike. Stories abound of people finding remarkable coins in the unlikeliest places: a jar of mixed change tucked away during a move, a childhood stash of coins rediscovered after years, an old album passed down through generations suddenly revealing a gem. The magic of these finds lies not just in value, but in surprise, the way something ordinary can become extraordinary when looked at with the right perspective. The idea that a coin could one day be worth far more than its face value, perhaps even astonishingly so, is not fantasy, but the result of how rarity, condition, and collector passion intersect. When demand meets scarcity in the eyes of collectors, prices can soar. But even beyond monetary figures, these coins hold something deeper. Proof that value is not always obvious, and that hidden wonders often lie in plain sight. A mint state 1974 Noment Mark Washington quarter is more than currency. It is a fragment of cultural memory, a piece of the past that resists the ordinary wear of time. For the person lucky enough to find such a specimen, it is not just a collectible. It is a connection to history, a reminder of continuity, and a small yet profound thrill of discovery. So when you think of the 1974 Washington quarter, minted in Philadelphia, passed through countless hands, touched by the everyday rhythms of life, know that some of these coins survived in ways that defy expectation. Next coin. The journey of the 1965 Washington quarter begins not in a treasure vault or a king's chest, but in the ebb and flow of ordinary American life. It begins in the pockets of housewives heading to the grocery store, in the change trays of small diners, in the hands of children buying baseball cards. In 1965, this quarter was a piece of the everyday world, a coin so familiar that most people scarcely gave it a second thought. Yet the story it carries, if you listen closely, is far more profound than face value or metal composition. In the years before 1965, quarters were struck in 90% silver. Those coins glinted and jingled with precious metal content. But in 1965, the United States shifted circulation coinage to a copper-nickel-clad composition, a change driven by the rising cost of silver and the practical needs of a growing economy. To most people at the time, this change was barely noticeable. A quarter was still a quarter. But to collectors and history lovers, this marked a new chapter, one where the humble quarter turned from prized silver into a symbol of everyday life. On the obverse of the coin stands George Washington, his calm, timeless profile facing left. By 1965, Washington's image had become as familiar as the face in a family portrait, a comforting presence in a world that was changing fast. His gaze seems to hold a quiet strength, a reminder of leadership forged in a very different era, yet still relevant in a century of accelerating transformation. There is something poetic about seeing his face on a coin that would circulate during times of both domestic comfort and global turmoil. The reverse bears the heraldic eagle, wings outstretched, clutching arrows and olive branches, a dual symbol of readiness and peace. In 1965, the world was in motion. The Cold War was one of the defining tensions of the age, space exploration was capturing imaginations, and everyday Americans were caught between optimism and uncertainty. The eagle on the quarter stood as a subtle testament to national identity, bold, calm, and enduring. This particular coin carries no mint mark, indicating it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest minting facility in the United States. Philadelphia's presses had been producing coinage since the earliest days of the Republic, and in 1965 they were operating at full speed to keep up with a booming economy. Millions of these quarters were produced, meant for everyday use and never intended to be rare or remarkable. But as history often teaches us, things made for the ordinary can become extraordinary over time. Most 1965 quarters were spent, worn, and forgotten. They passed through tills, slipped into change jars, jostled against keys and receipts in pockets. Over years and decades, their surfaces softened, details blurred, and once sharp edges grew round. These worn coins tell a story of life in motion, errands run, lunches bought, meters fed, a kind of quiet chronicle of mid-century America lived one small transaction at a time. Yet among the vast multitude of these coins were a rare few that escaped the friction of circulation almost entirely. Some were tucked away early by collectors, others lost in bags or albums that remained untouched over the years. These survivors shine with an almost unreal brightness compared to their well-worn counterparts. To hold one is to touch a fragment of 1965 that has resisted the wear of time, a relic preserved by accident or intention. Collectors refer to these pristine survivors as mint-state coins, pieces that show no signs of everyday handling. A mint-state 1965 quarter might still bear original luster, sharp details, and a surface that seems almost new beneath light. When such a coin is found, it commands attention not because it was once cherished, but because it escaped being used at all in the first place. In the world of numismatics, survival is a kind of beauty. And then there are the subtler thrills, the minting quirks and tiny variations that can elevate an ordinary coin into something deeply fascinating. Slight die differences, minute surface irregularities, and even microscopic striking anomalies can make one coin stand out from millions of others. To a casual observer, these may seem insignificant, but to a trained eye they can signal rarity and capture a collector's imagination. Imagine opening an old coin album inherited from a relative, flipping through decades of change, and discovering something that doesn't look quite like the rest. It gleams. Its edges are crisp. Its details are sharp. Under bright light, it seems impossibly preserved. That moment, that electric realization that what you hold is something rare, is the heart of coin collecting. It's the thrill of possibility born from patience and curiosity. These coins carry more than metal and imagery. They carry resonance. They connect us to a moment in time, a quiet afternoon in a small town, a lunchtime purchase in a bustling city, a coin passed hand to hand without thought. In their surfaces are embossed echoes of days gone by, of voices and footsteps that no longer echo, of simple moments that shaped countless lives. In the collector market, condition and rarity are the twin pillars that drive value. A coin in average condition tells a story of use. A coin in exceptional condition tells a story of survival. Collectors prize those survivors because they remind us that time does not treat all objects equally. Most fade into obscurity. A few remain vibrant, challenging the very notion of wear and loss. The dream that a single 1965 quarter could one day be worth vastly more than its face value is not rooted in fantasy so much as in the real nature of how markets value meaningful anomalies. When scarcity meets demand, and when a coin's condition defies expectation, prices can rise not just steadily but dramatically, especially when stories of exceptional finds circulate among collectors. But beyond potential market value is a deeper kind of worth, the emotional weight these coins carry. They are tangible links to the past. They whisper of a world before digital currency, before instant payments, before the intangible became commonplace. They remind us that money was once something you could hold, feel, and watch spin between your fingertips. For the person who uncovers a truly pristine example of a 1965 quarter, a coin that looks as if it stepped out of time rather than through it, it is not just a discovery, it is a moment of connection. It is a reminder that even the smallest object can bridge decades, bind memories, and carry stories untold. A coin like this speaks not just to collectors, but to anyone who wonders what hidden beauty might reside in the overlooked. In the end, the 1965 no-mint mark Washington quarter is more than a piece of metal stamped with a date. It is a testament to endurance. It is a symbol of continuity. It is a whisper from a bygone era that begs to be heard. And for those who know how to look, really look, it is a reminder that even the most ordinary things can hold extraordinary secrets, waiting patiently to be found and treasured. Next coin. The journey of the 1993 D Washington quarter begins not in an ivory tower or a collector's cabinet, but in the everyday rhythm of life, jingling in pockets, dropped into cash registers, passed casually from hand to hand. In 1993, this coin was part of the ordinary currency Americans used without a second thought, a simple quarter among millions. Yet, as time stretched on, something extraordinary began to happen. These once mundane pieces of change quietly transformed into cherished relics of an era long past, treasured not for their metal content but for the stories they carry. On the obverse of the coin stands the familiar and stoic profile of George Washington, a face that many of us have seen thousands of times without really looking at. In 1993, his visage was more than just a design. It was a reassuring symbol of continuity. Washington, the first president of a young nation, gazed out from coins carried by millions of people in an age when America was undergoing rapid change. From cassette tapes to CDs, from bulky desktop computers to the first whispers of the internet. His calm dignity connected past and present in the palm of every American's hand. Across the back of the coin spreads the heraldic eagle, wings outstretched as if ready to soar yet grounded in purpose. This emblem of strength, peace, and resolve fit a decade that balanced optimism with uncertainty. The Cold War had eased, yet new economic and cultural challenges emerged. In that context, the eagle became more than decoration. It became a silent witness to the shifting currents of history, etched in metal and carried everywhere from bustling city streets to quiet rural corners. This quarter bears the D mint mark, signifying it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest and most reliable mints in the United States. The facility's presses hummed day and night, creating coins destined for the everyday economy. Not for collectors, not for museums, but for real use. What no one expected was that a tiny percentage of these coins would later be seen as remarkable survivors of time. In 1993, most of these quarters entered circulation and were handled without care. They bought lunches, paid for parking, fed arcade machines, and were tucked into vending machines. They were folded into wallets and purses, forgotten in coin jars and desk drawers. Over time, most became worn and smooth, the sharpness of their details softened by decades of use. Viewed under a collector's magnifying glass today, these worn coins tell a story of life lived, of transactions, exchanges, and the quiet pulse of daily routine. Yet there remained a rare few that escaped this fate. Some quarters, for reasons only luck can explain, were never heavily circulated. Perhaps they were dropped into a piggy bank never opened until years later, or placed in a collection by someone who sensed, even back then, that coins might someday be more than change. These survivors retained their original surfaces, their sharp details, and the glint of mint-fresh metal that time somehow forgot to obscure. To a collector, a quarter in this pristine condition is not just a coin, it is a time capsule. Hold it under a bright light and you can almost see the moment it was struck at the Denver Mint, the metal flowing into the die, the faces and symbols coming to life with crisp clarity. It is as if a piece of 1993 reached forward and stopped just short of time's many abrasions. That vivid detail is what elevates some coins above their millions of counterparts. Collectors refer to these exceptional survivors as mint-state coins, pieces that avoided the abrasion and wear of circulation. In a world where most coins age quickly, a mint-state 1993 D quarter feels almost unreal. The edges remain sharp, the letters clear, and the fields of metal seem to glow faintly with the memory of their creation. To hold one is to hold a fragment of history that was never lost to time. What makes this coin even more fascinating are the subtle variations and nuances that can occur in any minting run. In the sea of coins churned out by the Denver Mint, tiny differences in die pressure, microscopic shifts in metal flow, or slight variations in striking can create examples that are unique. To a casual observer, such differences are invisible. But to a trained collector's eye, they are the sparks that can transform a common coin into a rare marvel. Imagine discovering one of these pristine quarters in a dusty old coin album, long forgotten by its original owner. Maybe it slipped out of circulation long ago and lay dormant in a drawer. Then one day, someone opens that drawer, notices a coin that looks sharper, cleaner, and more alive than the rest, and suddenly realizes they are holding something much more than pocket change. That moment, the thrill of recognition, is what drives collectors around the world. But a coin's true value is not just in its condition, it is in the story it carries. A 1993 D quarter that survived unscathed is a testament to fate and preservation. It invites us to consider where it has been, whose hands it nearly passed through, and what moments it witnessed. From school lunches to subway rides, small purchases to big memories. Every unblemished detail becomes a whisper of a life less ordinary. Collectors often speak of coins almost poetically, because they see beyond metal into connection. These are objects that link us to everyday lives long ago. They remind us that history is not just composed of grand events. It is woven from the countless small moments when ordinary people lived, worked, laughed, and carried change in their pockets while the world turned all around them. Because of this emotional resonance, mint-state survivors from common years like 1993 can be unexpectedly compelling in the collector market. Price is shaped not just by scarcity, but by story, the rarity of condition, the narrative of survival, and the dream that someone might hold in their hand a coin that defied the odds. These are the coins that spark conversations, not just transactions. And then there is the dream element, the notion that a single coin might one day be worth far more than its face value, perhaps even astonishing sums. In the world of numismatics, market value is not static. It shifts with demand, with trends, with discovery. Coins once overlooked can, in rare circumstances, become sought-after collectibles that attract intense bidding and deep admiration. Still, even beyond monetary value, these coins speak to something deeper. The simple, profound idea that the past lives on in everyday objects. A quarter that was once dropped into a soda machine or paid for a phone call now sits in a collector's hand, polished by time and circumstances, carrying layers of memory that its original users could never have imagined. So when you think of the 1993 D Washington quarter, don't see only metal and date. See a story of ordinary life transitioning into history, a narrative of millions of exchanges, of hands it passed through, of places it went, and of moments it intertwined with. See the possibility that hidden in plain sight, in a jar of old coins, there might be a survivor whose brilliance defies decades of use. And for the fortunate collector who finds such an exceptional piece, that quarter may be more than a collectible. It may be a reminder that history lives all around us in the most familiar things. It may show us that even the smallest objects, ordinary coins we once spent without thought, can contain the extraordinary, if only we learn to look closely and imagine deeply.